Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is John Eligon, and I want to welcome you all to Black Excellence KC Town Hall. And today we're going to be talking about basically Black economic empowerment. We're really at a crossroads right now in this country where there's lots of discussion and lots of energy around racial justice, around social justice movements. And what we've seen, obviously over generations, over the history of this country, is that one of the paths to liberation for Black people is through the economy, through economic empowerment. And then we know that over the years that there's been many barriers and many systemic things put in place to kind of make that more difficult, or to prevent Black people from succeeding on that level. So we've got a great panel here together tonight to talk about these things. So I'm going to introduce each one of them, or I'm going to introduce each one of them to you. They're each going to say a little bit about themselves, and we'll have a discussion. And feel free to pop in the comment section and put any questions you have at any moment. But put questions anytime, and we'll try to loop them in. And we just want to make this as lively a discussion as possible, and get as much of your participation as possible. So please, again, feel free to go in the comment section and put any questions if you have. So our first panelist is Devin. Devin, you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everybody. Devin Gordon. I'm the Senior Business Development Officer at AltTap. AltTap is a community development financial institution whose mission is to provide access to capital to underrepresented communities through the form of debt. We provide a variety of products, everything between a microloan upwards to a new market tax credit product. So I'm really excited to be here. And I'm really hopeful for the future. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on, Devin. Next we've got Brandon.
Hey, John, I'm Brandon Callaway, co-founder and executive director of Gift, Generating Income for Tomorrow. We are a 501c3 nonprofit here in Kansas City. We raise money and give out grants to Black-owned businesses that are located or operating in the urban core of Kansas City, in the historically redlined areas of Kansas City where Black poverty is most concentrated. And we recognize that area has been created to be an intentional economic desert for people of color. And so we are taking direct action in giving out grants to those Black-owned businesses that operate there, so that we can help them grow, we can help them expand and create jobs through the businesses that are there for the people that are in that area.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming on, Brandon. And next we've got Dell.
Hi, I'm Dalegens with the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City from our Omaha branch. And I do the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, for those that don't know, is the central bank to the United States, and I'm with our community development department, and I do our small business and economic development for our 7 states.
Great to have you on, Dell. Thank you. And last but not least, we've got Craig.
Hello, everybody. My name is Craig Moore, co-founder of Black Excellence KC. We are a nonprofit organization geared to develop and display Black professionals in Kansas City. Particularly with developing us as consumers, and so that we can ensure that we are closing the wealth gap between us and our counterparts.
Okay, great. Well, hey, that's our panel, and I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, to put them in the comment section, and we'll ask them as we go along. But fellas, I want to start off, the election just happened, right? It's still happening to a degree. And so I want to just jump right in and kind of ask all a question related to that. But if you all watched Joe Biden's speech on Saturday, when he, his victory speech, if you will, he said he basically thanked African Americans for basically saving his campaign when it was at its lowest. And he said, and I have the quote here, he said, "You've always had my back, and I'll have yours." That to me sounds like an invitation to say, what y'all need? I got you. So I want to ask you all, what should we be asking of the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration? Brandon, you got any thoughts there?
A little bit. So Joe Joe Biden in his platform, he spoke a lot about creating a system to invest in Black businesses and being intentional about creating policies that will uplift Black business owners to help to close that racial wealth gap. I mean, we'll see. I don't want to be negative, So I'm happy that Joe Biden won, and from the history of America, there is nothing really there that that makes me hopeful that the government will take intentional action on any level to right the wrongs that they have done. But he did put that out there, and so I mean, all I can really say about that is that we will be watching and seeing what he's doing, and if he's really put his money where his mouth is, or his policies where his mouth is.
Yeah, you said something, intentional action. Dell, I want to ask you about that because I think later in the conversation we'll get into some of the history of what's created the barriers that we see for Black people. But just speaking from your perspective, like what should the ask be of Black communities for this upcoming administration?
Yeah, well, first I have to say my views represent only my own and not the views of the Fed.
Gotcha.
I think with any administration and with any policymaker, that for us it's important just to level set. So the Black-white wealth gap or income gap has not changed since 1950. It's projected that the Black net worth, the median Black net worth, wealth is projected to be zero by 2053. So those two things should tell you something about where policy is at, where our intentionality as a Black race is at, what we focused on, and the implications of that. Because what that means, if you have zero net worth on average as a people group, is you're basically a renter in a land of owners. So what it really is going to take is policies that really work to turn that around. And so you're talking about infrastructure policy, you're talking about, let's take something like the opportunity zone, which I think is problematic, but with some tweaks with the opportunity zone where you have things like required percentage of ownership coming from the population that's already there, reallocating it from like real estate focus, which it is because it's a greater return, less risky return on investment, to business focus. Like you can tweak some of the pre-existing policies that are already in place and scale them up and focus on prioritizing Black ownership in these communities, and it could really do a lot. Now I know Biden has put out a plan that I read before, and I can't remember the specifics. And some of it I was cool with, but I don't think it goes nearly far enough. And I'll stop there because I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay, we'll get back to some of that more. I'm gonna push you on a couple of those things, but Craig, one interesting thing that I think you all did at Black Excellence. I was looking on the Instagram page. I think you put up Trump's platinum plan, and compared it to Biden's plan, and then what well, everyone's talking about the platinum plan because of Ice Cube and Lil Wayne and all those people. Like it was only 2 pages was the platinum plan, but Biden's plan. And I went on there the other day, and it's like you scroll and you scroll and you scroll and you scroll, so it's huge. So what from what you've seen, plans and stuff like that, what do you think should be the specific ask for Black America of the Biden administration?
Well, I mean, just to give my own personal thing that I've seen in there was the forgiveness of student loans. I think that we as Black people, we have so much debt, and not to get into the conversation of reparations, but if you want to get on that road, I feel like that's the first step on that road. And that is something that he did put inside his plan, was to come up with a plan to help cure that debt and to kind of structure out to where, as Dell mentioned, where there's affordable housing in the resident for Black owners, but I feel like that, those plans are put out, their words, until, somebody actually puts in the work to make those words turn into action. And I think us as individuals, that's where we kind of, put his feet to the fire to try to ensure that our representatives are representing us the correct way, and letting him know that these are the things that we are expecting. So I'm hoping that, and I think he even said that there was a possibility of free education to HBCUs for members under, I think a household under $250,000 or something like that. That would have been great for me 10 years ago. So it helps encourage our HBCUs. So if any of those things, I think even an inch towards any of those things being accomplished would be a great feat for all of us. And I'm hopeful that our representatives are hearing our voice when we want those things.
Yeah, you said a key word there, Craig, expectations, right? And not to plug myself too much, but I have an article dropping tomorrow in which I did interview lots of Black voters about what their expectations are. And Davin, I'm wondering for you, so what are your expectations and what do you think we could realistically ask for, I guess, in this coming administration?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, we've got to look at the existing sort of infrastructures that we have in place. So things like the CDFI fund is a great example of an existing, part of the budget that supports these communities. CDFI has historically supported Black communities over the last, 20 to 30 years. But our budget, we get like 1% of a budget. So I think, we could easily increase the budget to investing in the organizations like AltTap, like LIST, all these organizations that are investing in Black communities. And I think that's an easy, quick thing that we can do that's practical. I think it's realistic. I also think we need to look at regulation when we talk about banking. And I know Dell have a lot to share about this, but the CRA Act is in place, and they recently made some updates to it, which doesn't necessarily favor our communities. And we've got to hold not only our legislators and our politicians, but also our financial institutions accountable. And both banks, CDFIs, whoever, they hold so much money and so much power, and they make the decisions on where and how money is flowing into our communities. And I don't think we're doing enough or paying enough attention to, how they're doing that. A lot of these banks are getting away with doing things that aren't really impacting the community in a positive way, but they get away with the checkbox that they've done their efforts for CRA. And I think there's a lot of things we can do there. So those are just some of my immediate thoughts based on this conversation.
Right. And real quick, Davin, just to put the definitions out there. So what is CDFI and CRA?
So CDFI is Community Development Financial Institution. It's actually ran by the U.S. Treasury Department. And then CRA is Community Reinvestment Act. And these are both outcomes of the civil rights movement and a lot of the redlining and things like that. And I know Dell could probably jump into a lot of the history there, but these are things that have been in place for the last 40 to 30 years. And obviously the wealth gaps, the challenges we see in a lot of our Black communities haven't gotten that much better over that period of time. So there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, and essentially those things are essentially banking systems have a responsibility, have a duty to invest in communities that have been marginalized or redlined and whatnot. Is that essentially like what these things do? Correct? Gotcha. Speaking of that history, Dell, can we dive into that a little bit? We know that the wealth gap is something that's created through intentional government policies. Just tell us a little bit about the history of what are some of those major things that have led to what we've seen now, and how do we begin to break down some of those systemic barriers that were created intentionally by the government?
Well, white racism. Do I really have to say much more than that? We can stop there and look at the trickle effects. But if we want to be more specific, I think first of all, a lot of it falls on our shoulders. Like, if you look at, I have a saying that never ask for others what you're first unwilling to do for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at us coming out of the civil rights era, we never transitioned from the civil rights era, right? So when we came out of slavery, we all had a mandate while we were in slavery was to be free. And then when we went into Jim Crow, we kind of had a mandate to be able to civilly participate in society. And then once civil rights happened, it's kind of like we lost any cohesive national narrative on what our focus should be, and we're paying the price for that 50 years later. Like when I say that the white-Black income gap has not changed in 60 years, and this is post-civil rights, post-integration, Like, I don't think people understand the magnitude of that statement. When I say Black wealth is projected to go to zero by 2053, I don't think people understand the magnitude of that statement. But when you go back to our history, especially, post civil rights, we have not had kind of that dominant mandate, that we all collectively focused on. I've been saying for years it should have been economic self-determinism, because the other stool in the leg of our economy is capitalism. We call ourselves a democratic capitalist nation for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you over prioritize one and lose sight of the other, you see we suffering the consequences that we see now. So real quick on some of the history. So when CRA Act came a lot about, Community Reinvestment Act came a lot out of redlining. And so redlining was where banks would take deposits from a particular community but not lend there. Usually it was because of race and location. Happened all across the nation. Tremendous impact on wealth creation, generational wealth transfer, all of those other things. But what other people don't really talk about as much as redlining is you had this thing called urban renewal that happened. And they were bisecting Black communities with highways. So like in Omaha, I stay in a Black community called North Omaha. They put highway directly through the entire community. I think they tore out 1,000 homes, bisected what was known as the Black community. And then it's really interesting because the interstate was supposed to go all the way up to connect to this other interstate called I-80 that goes this way. But the Black community had no political power. The suburb the northern suburb that was supposed to go through was predominantly white, and they said, no, you're not putting that through. So it literally pushes through this way, and then it becomes residential, it stays residential, and then it picks back up where it was originally supposed to connect to. And so if you go to Northeast KCK, you'll see it happen. It probably happened a little bit in Kansas City, but it's happened all around the nation. So like you have these layers. So think about these layers, right? So you had redlining, you had urban renewal, you had the war on drugs, and then you had, which came with it, mass incarceration. And then overlapped on that is something that was national called shareholder primacy, which in the 70s said corporations primarily exist to maximize shareholder value. So you further favor the ownership class, and we're sitting on the bottom. And that tension has just increased until now. So, and then you layer on the fact that we've had no mandate as a collective group on what we're trying to do. And you kind of see where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm. I was shocked by what you said. Did I hear you right that the average net worth for Black families is expected to be zero by 2050?
It's the median net worth.
Median net worth.
Is projected, if nothing changes, to be zero by 2053. It's always, depending on what you look at, it's already 10 to 14 times lower than that of the average white.
How is it going in that direction? Like how is that happening?
Well, debt. I mean, so just the basic math economic lesson for the participants. So what your wealth level, your net is your net worth. Those are the same terms. So it's how much you own minus how much you owe, right? So Black families own fewer homes that are in areas that are worth less, where the home is valued at less, and they have a higher debt rate. So when you see that home being the highest ownership asset that most people have, and higher debt levels because of a variety of factors, and then we just don't have a lot of the other assets that improve, as they age in time, like stocks, other things like that. And so once you start tracking that out over time, they're saying it's trending down towards zero, with Latino population at is projected to be zero by 2073. Nothing changes.
Wow. And Brandon, I mean, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and how do you see these challenges manifest itself in their lives and their efforts to make their living and to do what they want to do?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole reason we exist is because Black businesses are undercapitalized and not being able to get not being able to get the money that they need early on in their life cycle, so that they can grow and expand and create jobs for their community and be in a position to be able to take risks with their business, try out new things, and so like that. I mean that is how they are continually affected. I mean, you got organizations like AltTap that are chipping away at that. I try so hard not to be biased about organizations like Gifts, because we started Gifts because we feel like we are literally a solution, or kind of that we potentially could be the solution, and I'm passionate about that. I believe that we are like we are the Black business owners for years, for decades, have been Black people in general, whether you're owning a business, whether you're doing anything, have been trying to get a fair slice of economic power, a fair shot at participation in the economy, and have been met with roadblock after roadblock, and so because what we hesitate to do is focus a lot on that's not even true. We do talk about what has happened and how we got here, but our primary focus is where we go and what we do, and so like which is the idea behind Gift is collective power, right? We're nonprofit. We raise money. We raise 80% of around 85% of the money that we raise comes directly from individuals who believe in the mission. And so we got a little bit of corporate funding, we get a little bit of grant funding, but we get money directly from individuals in the community that want to make a change, and want to take action. So yeah, those issues are always there for those Black business owners, and I think that we have come up with innovative and creative ways to take action and move that needle to try to stop that, stop or slow down or reverse the statistic that Dale was just talking about of reaching.
What are some of those innovative ways? Tell us some of those innovative ways that you all.
So Gift is a highly innovative. I have looked across the country and maybe I've missed something, but I don't see anybody else doing what we do. I mean, we literally are 6 months old. We raise money. We raised over $100,000. So in these 6 months, and we're giving out grants directly to Black-owned businesses. We work fast. We've given out 2 $10,000 grants already. We're moving on another $10,000 grant in the next 2 weeks, and then we're going to bump up to $25,000 grants. And we are realizing and just acknowledging that all of those barriers are in place for Black business owners, that especially Black business owners that are operating in those historically redlined areas that have been made to be intentional economic deserts for them, made to intentionally hold them back. And so we are jumping in and doing what I have not seen anyone else do. I mean, we are specifically doing it with grants, not loans. We're not taking equity. We're not doing microloans. We are giving grants, and I mean, we move quick. We like I said, we've only been around for 6 months, and we will be giving out 8 grants this year. 1 grant a month throughout the rest of the year. So
gotcha. And Davin, like the issues and challenges that Dell brought up in the history and what Brandon was talking about, these are like massive things, right? These are institutional things that were created over generations, over decades, right? Do you feel like you're chipping away at it all with AltTap? Like, do you feel that it's getting somewhere? Are you frustrated? Like just tell me how you feel about kind of where it's headed.
Yeah, it's a loaded question, and I think there's 2 sides to it. I think, yes, we're making a huge impact. We are making a difference, especially during COVID. We've been able to support so many small businesses during these tough times to kind of get them through this. But and I've talked to Dell about this before. A lot of times when it comes to not just us, but any sort of micro lender, there's that micro mentality. It's like, just do enough to, and a lot of businesses are okay with being a lifestyle business, not accelerating growth, not, changing their family's trajectory. But I think that there's an opportunity there to really change the narrative and help people see the opportunity of what scaling their mom and pop business could look like. That could be, a barbecue restaurant bottling their stuff and shipping it all across the country, and the rubs, and it could be, the juicery that opens up juiceries all around the country and franchising. There's so many, I think, opportunities that we could really help business owners scale. And I know, the products that we have to offer as far as like microloans aren't really gonna, be able to make a huge dent into that. But man, it's not easy. That's a tough question to answer. But I really think that there's a lot of innovative products that are in the pipeline. So obviously, what Brendan's doing with Gift is amazing. But I also think like revenue-based equity investing is a really interesting model where they're not necessarily taking, equity, but they're repaying based on how they're performing versus having that monthly payment. So it gives them that sort of runway that they need. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, but the other missing piece too is we need more, folks, creative, innovative people working in the financial industry. There's a lot of fintechs popping up, but you don't see a lot of people of color either working or leading these initiatives. And so they tend to, just like, a lot of the things that we've seen over our history of time, is they miss the opportunity to serve different populations because there's no one there representing them at that table of making those decisions. So I don't know if that answered anything directly to your question.
Part of what you said, I'm curious. I want to follow up. Like when you talk about, there's ways that business could scale up, and it feels like sometimes maybe that's not part of the desires. Is that because there's just no? Is that a lack of like knowledge about how to do that? Is that a lack of ambition? Is it a lack of resources, or like what's behind that, you think?
All of the above, honestly. One, debt's just not structured sometimes for if someone's going to scale to that degree, because there's that monthly repayment. You need to have a quick return on that investment. Mm-hmm. Sometimes scale can take a long time. It's not like, and depending on what the industry is, but things to that nature. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. I was reading Katina's comments, but. I'd be interested to hear what Craig or Dell have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. Craig, you got anything to chime in on that?
I think a lot of it comes in with the mindset. Recently, I've been reading a book from Dr. Joy called Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder, and I feel like where we're in right now, if you call what we're in right now modern day slavery, I think we have to think along the mindset of runaway slaves. They did things innovative, and they created representation of those innovative things to get out of the situation that they're in. And we pretty much have to do that, have to have that same mindset when it comes to growing our business, when it comes to seeking out more education. We at BXKC now, we have a campaign called Representation Matters. And that is basically a platform where we're giving a weekly look at somebody who is successful in their industry right now, just because we feel like that you don't know where you can go unless you know that somebody's been there. You got to know that path has been there. And for you to even go across it, I think that kind of goes to Katina's last comment, there for that scale of growth. I knew nothing about scaling a business until I went to the Kauffman Foundation and went through the fast track program. But I can say that I was intimidated by that program because I didn't see anybody who looked like me in that. And so that's where you have these organizations like the EBB, or you have these organizations like Porterhouse who are out there, who look like us, who are creating these incubators. And although it might not feel like it's enough right now, it's a step in the right direction. And we all just kind of have to, follow the drinking gourd, to kind of go back to my first point of one, seeing what that plan is, but actually being great consumers of that plan. As much, I said this to Brandon the other day, when it comes to small business and them growing, they rely on us as consumers to help them grow. And so just as much grace as you would give a establishment for having a piece of hair in your food, you should give that much, and you'll go back to that place, you should give that much grace to the Black establishment who might have been a little bit late bringing your food out, you know. And so us as consumers, we have to continue to invest not only the time, not only financially, but our time. And you know, it just takes a little bit more effort for all of us. And I think that once it's shown, once that path is shown of this is how it's to be done, you know, hopefully we don't reach that zero, but you know, I'm pretty sure it's kind of inevitable at this time. But hopefully we're teaching our children, we're teaching the generations to come on how they should proceed forward.
Gotcha. I just want to remind our viewers, you know, if you have any comments, put them in the comment section. We'll try to read some of them or ask any questions. And then Craig, I just wanted to follow up with you, you know, like on this issue of, you know, how we can be as consumers. One thing that I think is important about what you all are doing at Black Excellence is you're kind of creating this ecosystem. You're creating this community of Black, you know, professionals. And I remember when I moved to Kansas City 8 years ago from New York, and I lived in Harlem at the time. And, you know, there's no shortage of kind of a Black professional working community there. I struggled to find that in Kansas City, but tell me how building that network and that community can really function to help the community thrive eventually economically and things like that. How important is it to build that community in achieving these goals?
I think it's overall. It's the passing down of information through generations. You know, we are focused on being a cross-generational organization because we know that there's such a wealth of information for the professionals that come before us that the youth has to learn. And I think that is probably one of the biggest gaps that we have, is that each generation feels like that they're starting something new, you know, but really somebody's already done it before you. And so these, you know, our events that we have pre-COVID, that we had were to bring all the generations together so that you can, you know, meet that potential mentor, so you can meet that counterpart that's maybe just a couple of years older than you that went through the same thing that you're going through right now. And what it does is it creates what we're trying to do is create a cohesive movement amongst the generations, but together as a culture. You know, me as a marketer, or, you know, in my early days as a marketer, I did not know, you know, the importance of a Rolodex, you know, but I knew a lot about social media. You know, I might not know anybody independently, but I learned from my mentor, I learned from my peers that not only do I need to have this many followers, but I need to have a connection with those followers too. And so being able to be able to bring all these generations together so that, one, you can have that conversation as a culture, but then you can have that conversation as an industry. I feel like it's very important because it allows us to not continue to reinvent the wheel, but just make the wheel stronger through each stride.
Gotcha. Dell, I wanted to ask you, because, you know, we're probably 25, 30 minutes into this, and I haven't brought up the coronavirus yet, which is obviously the pandemic has had a massive impact on society as a whole, and I think particularly Black and brown communities. So can you give us a sense of this path that we're already on a difficult path, as you mentioned, you know, what's going to happen by 2052, or what's projected to happen? How has COVID impacted that path, and, you know, like, where are we at now?
Yeah, well, first, kudos to Brandon. That's pretty dope what you're doing, and I just think it's phenomenal. Something that needs to be amplified. As part of what I've been saying is that we need to create our own priority of making economics and economic growth the #1 priority in the Black community. I know we got social justice issues. I know we got civil rights issues, but economics is the foundation in which any society is built on, and you cannot misprioritize that once you get free. Like, you can't do much about it when you're enslaved, but once you're free, that should be your immediate transition point, because economics fundamentally is about survival and resource allocation.
Doesn't some of that overlap, though?
So
I mean,
that's
like, in the
point
sense
one.
that part of that.
No, it doesn't. So if you think about economics as the decisions people make in the face of scarcity, then everything else feeds off that. So discrimination feeds off that. Racism was a function of economics, not just because people didn't like black and brown people. It was part of a colonial mercantile system that was designed to exploit through colonialism, either black land or black bodies, right? So racism existed because of mercantilism and the origination of capitalism. There's no such thing as race. Before that, it was so you could devalue the human population to exploit them. So educational systems are designed in part to reinforce how you create economic productivity. The point in case, our whole entire education system is built off the Prussian model, which started in the 1900s, which was designed to support the manufacturing and industrialized industry. Which is why if you remember when you were little kids, all of those desks were lined up in order, just like in a manufacturing production line. So we can keep going down the list. Your religion, early stage, was an extension from how do you coordinate and control the group in order to control your space and your place, right? So economics is the bedrock, which going all the way back to the Neanderthals. Every society is built on it. Everything extends from that. And even if you get away from what it was originally intended to do, like in complex societies like we have, like, sophisticated religious systems, sophisticated social systems, they all originated or can be traced back to something functioning in economics, because survival is a fundamental human thing that we all strive for as a species. And economics is fundamentally about survival. And that's a long lesson to say, Brandon, what you're doing is super dope. Keep doing it. Help you scale it up.
So I definitely appreciate that. And I know this question was not for me, but I did want to jump in on that, because I mean, even when we talk about policing, like, we are not about we are about economic empowerment and closing the racial wealth gap and economic prosperity for Black people. But even when we talk about policing, I mean, the history of redlining is such that, like, Black poverty in most cities is concentrated in a specific area on purpose. And when we have high levels of poverty, that usually comes with high levels of crime. And so if I got a high level of Black poverty over here and like thriving economic societies over here, where the police going to be? The police is going to be where the crime is, which is coincidentally where the low income area is, which also coincidentally is primarily Black. And so like, I mean, that we can even draw a line to how economic oppression leads to a problem with over policing and the relationship that police have with Black and brown people.
And John, I don't want people to be confused. I'm not saying you focused on economics to the exclusion of other things.
Yeah.
That you prioritize it. And the best example I can give you is, we all have a certain amount of vertebrae. And if your vertebrae are aligned correctly, you can walk nice and smooth. Maybe if you're a hooper, man, you got a nice little crossover or whatever. Switch an L4 with an L5, and what happens to your entire posture? So we do a lot of good things, but we do them in a misaligned order or with misaligned priorities. And so when we start asking, what we really hardly ever teach our kids is the why behind what we're trying to achieve, right? So we don't teach philosophy anymore. Like, we're not sitting here debating Marcus Garvey versus W. Du Bois as a foundational framework for how we see ourselves in society. And I think that's a detriment. So then we turn around and we go and say, well, yeah, you should start a business, or yeah, you should go out and support Black Lives Matter, or yeah, you should do this, or yeah, you should do that. But as a people, we have been disconnected from any philosophical or dominant framework. So it's hard to organize yourself in a consistent and sustainable fashion if you have no clear destination. And so that's more along the lines of what I'm really pushing for. In regard to COVID, we just released a guide. Actually, the press release went out today. Small Business Owners of Color Recovery Guide. We're going to do national outreach on it. It's a synthesized, Davin, you're quoted in it. It's a synthesized document from people across the nation that work in in our African-American, Latino communities, that work with them, research and whatever. We give a series of recommendations on how to prep for the recovery post-COVID, because it's going to be huge. Like, early stage data showed that 42% of Black businesses at one point had their doors closed. I think it was like 32% of Latino, 32 to 30% Latino, et cetera. And then it declines or goes up and down based upon if the economy is open or closed. But here's the good thing. And most people don't realize this either. Coming out of the 2008 recession, who do you think produced the most new jobs the fastest?
Black women.
Black and Latino businesses. Black and Latino businesses. And those of you in Kansas City, Devin definitely knows, we released a report called the Black Women Startups Report. 1 million businesses were started by Black women between 2002 and 2012. It probably created the same amount from 2012 to 2022. Black men outpaced, white men as well. So Black men are doing it too. So we're going to be on the leading edge of helping the nation recover economically too, but we got to do it with the lens of focusing on ourselves.
Yeah, that's an important stat that you say, because I think, knowing that, Black businesses, that we can be job creators, that we are, we can do that. I think that people tend to overlook us sometimes and say, oh, let's go to the nearest, white, hipster white, startup business or something like that. And I'm curious, for both Devin and Brandon, like, one of the challenges, and I think Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, this was part of that KC Star article that you were in, but part of the problem with COVID is the recovery money. Because a lot of Black-owned businesses were not, traditionally financed, that was presented a challenge for for a lot of those businesses. What have you all seen in the businesses you all have been working with here, and do you see that being corrected, I guess?
Well, I'll just jump in saying that it's all about relationships, and I think that's, for me, especially when you talk about PPP, you notice that a lot of our mainstream financial institutions, they weren't able to help a lot of Black businesses because they lacked those relationships. Just weren't there, unfortunately, because the banks aren't in the community. They're not building these relationships. They're not getting to know folks. So I think, for us, we had this very intentional effort of, we want to do what we can to get as many PPP loans for Black-owned businesses. So we, proactively reached out to folks. We actually, we hired a few of local CPAs, and we paid them, an hour of consultation with anybody that was interested in applying for PPP, because that was the other problem, is a lot of our entrepreneurs and small businesses didn't either have, their financials together so that they could apply when the money was there. And so they just needed the extra support. And so we were able to do that. But yeah, that's a big one, is, maintaining, building those relationships with the different folks that have access to you.
Yeah, and I mean that was one of the main things that we saw too, which is one of the, and I really do hate to sound like an infomercial, and I keep plugging myself, but one of the reasons that at Gift we partnered with EBB, and so Entrepreneur Business Basics, and with Kira Cherie over there, and we pay for 12 months of business consulting for everybody that we give a grant to, so that we only got so much money, so we know that we're not gonna be able to do it for everybody, but God forbid we give a grant to somebody and we find ourselves in another huge situation like this. It may not be COVID, it may be something else, it may be another recession, and so helping them be set up specifically where basically their books are good, and so that they could be better off, and trying to help facilitate those banking relationships so that they can be a step closer to where they need to be, should something like this happen again.
Yeah, I want to get over to Katina had a couple of good points that I want to get to, but before I do that, I want to ask you a question, Craig. Like, because this is Black Excellence KC, because this is in Kansas City, we're talking to a Kansas City audience. What about the ecosystem here in Kansas City as it comes to business and things like that? Are there any unique or interesting things about Kansas City specific that you think we can either leverage to our advantage, or that may provide even greater challenges for us that are Kansas City specific?
I think that, Kansas City, when it comes to businesses in general, there are a lot of great tools out there. There are a lot of great resources out there. But when it comes to particularly in the Black and Brown communities, again, like, are those programs and are those resources available, and are they approachable? Like I said, I go back to my experience with going through Kaufman Fast Track, and or even going through the Sprint Accelerator, and trying to find a mentor who even understood like I have no money. I don't have any of the education and background of your regular startup guy, of people who are flying in from California to Kansas City to create a startup and had way more experience, and even when it comes to, and I'm trying not to put my foot in my mouth with these other organizations, but at this time, I really want to think about us when it comes to like applying for like Digital Sandbox, or when it comes to even presenting in front of 1 million cups, are the people who I present to going to understand my struggle? And it's not going to be so much as, empathy resources, but resources because you truly believe in my vision and you see what's actually going on. And so I think that was the biggest hurdle. But I think that COVID has allowed the Black community, from what I've seen, from all the innovators that I see in Kansas City, from the Black and brown community, we've been able to kind of take time off from our jobs and sit down and really work on our passions, right? And sit down and really work on what it is that it's going to take for us as a whole to be able to move forward. Brandon has invited me into a coalition of great minds. It's my you have Black Excellence KC, you have Black Privilege, you have Heartland Chamber, you have Gift, you have the EBB, you have the Porterhouse, and all of us in sync as one, trying to do what we can together, and not really, fighting about who's on the title line or who is in control of what, of being able to be in one. Those are like dramatic steps that happen, over the course of those 3 months of all of us having to, be in our own homes and really trying to figure this out, and I think that's kind of where I see the progress happening. And I can only hope that it's kind of ignited a fire in everybody else. I think, again, like, we all have to be on the same wavelength. And sometimes, not to get, sometimes it just takes, that sitting down of understanding of like, okay, this is where we're at. And there are people out there trying to do the same thing that I'm doing, and pushing our egos out the way to be able to work together and really accomplish, this great feat that we have.
Gotcha. I want to read Katina's one of her comments here. Well, it spans over two things, but she says, I believe that it is insanity to continue to beg our oppressor for liberation in any form. What can we do collectively to change the narrative that Dell has shared this evening? Like, for example, growing Gift, having our own AltTap, positioning our Black-owned financial institutions to support us as consumers and entrepreneurs. And then her next comment, not to mention the year-long coaching provided by Gift. I do struggle, though, with the model because, as Dell can tell you, most of our businesses are not brick and mortar product based, nor are all of us located on the east side. That, therefore, Brandon creates another barrier for many of the case Black businesses. Any of you all want to address that?
Sure. So here, let me scroll back up.
I'll put it back up for you. So which one do you want?
Let's start with the first one. So actually, this answer combines both of those. So Katina is absolutely right. Like we because we are focused solely on the east side, we are not hitting all black businesses. But so like we have a growth plan, right? So we have a plan to move into our next phase and our next phase and our next phase. And I think I mentioned we've raised over $100,000 so far. But I mean, what we need, we need to hit $20 million, right? Because when we get there, then we can expand. We can expand beyond the east side of Kansas City to all Black businesses. It's in our plan. It's something that we are intending to do. And then we have we have a 4-tiered system, and we look at the different types of businesses. And so, a business being brick and mortar, like we are not only investing in brick and mortar businesses, we invest in, primarily we are investing in businesses that have a high likelihood of success at the moment. So those essential clothes and food and stuff like that. But again, when we grow, we want to be able to invest if there's a luxury spa, right? And it makes sense for us to be able to to invest in that Black business, we want to do that. If there's a tech business that is obviously not brick and mortar, we want to be able to do that. But you know, while we have a finite amount of money, we got to make sure that we have the most impact with the money that we have, which goes into like what we can do. So at Gift, obviously we raise money for ourselves, but I am a strong proponent of Black philanthropy. Right there are other organizations beyond Gift that are focused on other things, and the Black community has historically been left out of the philanthropy process. So I come from from working previously at another nonprofit, and in philanthropy, it's usually just straight up it's white people going to other white people and getting money, and then usually spending that money on a program that is in a predominantly black area, and so because Black people have historically been left out of the philanthropy process, it is harder for Black nonprofits to get going, get the capital that they need, get the donors that they need to really have that impact, because for philanthropy is just not as common in the Black community, and so growing the normalization of philanthropy in the Black community, I think will really be a help to kind of move a lot of things forward, and that's not me just saying, hey, give us more money at Gift. I mean, that's organizations like the Green Line Initiative that are also doing great work. Alive and Well that is also doing great work. There are a lot of Black-led nonprofits that don't have the name that that the bigger ones in Kansas City have. I'm not going to drop specifics, but they don't have the names that a lot of the bigger nonprofits in Kansas City have. And so yeah, that's my answer to
that. So I'm outside, like most of you know, I live in Omaha, but before COVID, I was up in Kansas City an awful lot. And one of the things you all have to understand is you are doing a significantly better job than a lot of other cities. So, right now I'm on the KC Chamber, Access to Capital Committee for East of Troost, and the KC Rising Access to Capital. So you got two major institutions that are pushing to drive capital into the East of Troost. And Katina, I'm getting to your question. I just want to add some context. So now think about this. So you got Nia Richardson, and I always want to call her Nia Long for those of you back in the day, but Nia Richardson at KC BizCare, driving initiatives through that part. You have OHUB that came in. You got Enterprise that just came into AltTap. Those are three people of color specific organizations or focuses that have come in within 2 years, right? When I first started coming to Kansas City 10 years ago, y'all had nothing. I was like blown away at how nothing you had. And now you have people trying to flex in other ways to support people of color. But none of that is going to make that much of a difference if the community itself does not organize about itself and its own mission and its own mandate, because that's how you leverage collective action. That's why what Brandon you're doing is super important, because you brought it home first. And now once you brought it home first, now you have set a vision and a priority, and other people can jump on that, but we know what it is, right? It's not external from us, it's internal and supported. It doesn't mean these other things don't matter, but when things rise up from the community and you can pull that stuff together, then it gives it an extra level of power. Now we have to figure out how to replicate, support, and sustain those while simultaneously working with those that are trying to do it from outside of our community or have different forms of the community structure. And these are the things that we need to see. Because I'm like Brandon, when Brandon said, we don't really need to keep going back to history. We're right, we've been overstudied to death. I really believe this, that it would only take 10 years to radically transform the Black economy in the United States if we all aligned and prioritized in a much more scalable way, because we have all the assets that we need right now within our community. I mean, we have the size, our collective purchasing power is the size of the 13th largest GDP in the world.
What's stopping us from doing that?
We're So there's a difference. If I poke you with one finger, that may hurt, especially if I get you in the eye, but there's a reason you make a fist. It's because it's aligning your energy. There's a reason that a light bulb will shine the light on something so that you can see, but you focus a laser beam and you can shoot it to the moon, right? So we're spread out all over the place, trying to fight everybody. We're trying to fight all these battles at the same time on all of these different fronts, and that's a recipe for a failed strategy. So we just need to continue to bring this back home and ask ourselves, why do we keep talking about Black Wall Street as such a significant, monumental thing in our history? And then ask ourselves, well, how could we do that in a time of significant and overt hostile oppression, much more than we face today, which is much more insidious? Then the final question is, okay, well, how do we recreate that? How do we recreate that within the new millennium with the digital technology, with globalism, with all of these other things and the resources that we currently have? It's not an issue of resource availability. It's a resource of resource organization. And so that's where we really need to start, in my opinion.
Are you being considered for Commerce Secretary or something like that, man?
No, man, I'm
need something like that, man. You're inspiring me right here.
Look, I'm just trying to. I've been working on this stuff for 30 years. Mm-hmm. I just got my PhD 2 days ago. I'm just trying to make us better as a guy who's from a Black community. At one point, it was one of the poorest Black communities in the nation, that have seen all of these type of strategies, more philanthropy than almost anywhere else in the nation, and is still being so broken, the home of Warren Buffett. If that doesn't start making you ask yourself, what can we do better, right? And I've been blessed to be at the Federal Reserve, which has allowed me to really, connect across the nation and build stuff with brilliant minds, and come up to Kansas City and learn what you do, and have friends there and support you all in different places. And I look at this and I'm like, we are so powerful. Like, people don't realize 50 years after slavery, our business growth rate was 1,150% from the end of slavery to 50 years. We created over 180 Black HBCUs, over 180 Black banks, all during the same time period. You know where they were capitalizing them? They would go to churches. They would pull their money in churches. The churches would turn around and capitalize the insurance market. They capitalized the bank, all these different things. And so we just need to bring that energy back, and we can do things that are unprecedented in the history of America. So Black people have been doing things unprecedented in the history of the world based upon our starting point. We usually forget that, right? That we started being brought across the ocean, losing our language, our culture, and a lot of other things. And now we are here today. And we can talk all we want about what we're not, but we need to talk about more about what we are, because we're super dope.
Gotcha. Well, hey, we're running low on time here, but I'd like just a kind of quick lightning round for each of you to address. Partially what Dell started talking about there, but what is the one thing or a couple of things that you would advise Black people in Kansas City that they can start doing tomorrow or next week? That they can start doing right away to help create this ecosystem that we need to ultimately achieve Black economic empowerment. What's the thing or the things that you would tell people to start right away? Craig, you want to start?
Yeah, take that chance. I feel like that as we have been normalized to be consumers for other cultures, we need to take that chance on our own culture. Just as much as you might write a great review for one business, write a great review for the next business. Just as much as you would consider going to a D1 school, I see now the transition of considering going to HBCUs. We have to invest in the institutions and the communities that were made for us for this work, and I think that it all starts with making those plans and being intentional in always investing in the Black and brown community. I think that once we do those, you have Liberty Bank, that is a banking institution in Kansas City on the Kansas and the Missouri side. You have, Killer Mike. I don't know too much about his bank, but he just started a Black bank that raised, quite a bit of money. Having $100 in that bank account or having $100 in that savings account in those institutions and growing that money and slowly transferring away would allow those businesses, would allow these communities to continue to grow and develop. I think that's part of our biggest problem is that we start off, we get going, and then we find one thing that we don't like, and then we go back to what we feel like is comfortable. So getting out our comfort zone and being more comfortable in our own skin and being more comfortable in our own community is a great start for this work that we're all trying to accomplish.
Yeah, amen. Davin?
Yeah, I mean, what Craig said, but obviously, putting your dollar into Black businesses. For those that work in the corporate industry, if you have any access to your supplier diversity or procurement office, hold them accountable. Ensure that they are giving access to these opportunities, not just to the same folks that they've been working with over the same years, but diversifying that pool, because not a lot of people talk about that, but our corporations and anchor institutions have so much purchasing power that could really accelerate the growth of a lot of our businesses. And then lastly, I lost my train of thought again. It's been a rough day for me today. But honestly, I think those are some important things. Is really supporting, liking, sharing, commenting on social media for Black-owned businesses is so important. It doesn't cost you a thing to do those things, and those are easy ways for their message, their product, their services to get out there into the community. So, and actually, I'll give a plug while I'm on here right now. I'm wearing a Ruby jeans shirt, and here's some coconut stick. If you haven't seen it, it's the best chapstick out there. So Black-owned business, please check them out.
So just Google coconut stick and we'll find it?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Brandon?
Yeah. So two things, obviously everything that they said. So if my first thing is that if you're a professional, if you're a Black professional, you're a professional in general, and you work for any kind of corporation that has said that they want to, that they want to either internally look at themselves for racial equity, or look at how the organization operates in racial equity. It may be an uncomfortable thing to do to try to hold your organization accountable for what they said they were going to do, but you never know, right? Like maybe you shoot that email to one of your superiors and say, "Hey, where are we at on this work?" And maybe that email is the thing that continues to drive that work forward, because it's a lot. It's really easy. I mean, we saw a lot of corporate statements, a lot of Black Lives Matter, a lot of "we stand with you," a lot of "now is the moment" type stuff. But that was a little while ago. And so, if you're a professional, you're at one of those organizations, then ask them, what are we doing now? And then in the philanthropy space, I am always going to say, look into Black philanthropy. Look into organizations that are doing direct work to advance the Black community. We talk about voting power. Your vote matters. We talk about buying power. So where you go and you spend money at a Black business, but you also have philanthropic power. Where you donate your money matters. What that small organization, what that Black-led organization can do with your $10 is probably a lot more than what that huge organization can do with your $10. And when I say $10, that's what I mean. That's our ask at Gift. But a lot of people think, oh, I can't donate because I'm not rich. And you ain't got to be rich to donate. Just look into Black-led organizations that are doing things that inspire you in your community, and find ways to support them either financially or, just like Davin said, amplify their voice, share something, like something, tell somebody about them. So yeah, those are my two things.
Great. And Dell, you want to have the last word here?
Yeah, I'll just say, man, I love you all, and you're extremely important and valuable. We don't hear that enough. Black men don't hear that enough, for sure. And I just appreciate you all, especially being that you're younger guys coming up and trying to do that. And we really need to celebrate individuals like you for the energy that you put out there. I know the work Katina's up in some comments, the work you're putting out there, you're extremely important. And that needs to be said more than anything else, because we often come out as Black people from our pain points, and we express our pain. And even when we're trying to, celebrate things, is celebrating things that are coming out of a pain experience. And I think it's important to celebrate and show love and keep that in the forefront, because that's ultimately what's going to bind your culture together and bind you together and allow you to have grace and empathy, especially within our communities where, sometimes we can get fractioned and divided between class, location, gang, fraternities, sorority. And so using that as a tie that binds, I'm just excited to be with four, talented young men and listen to the innovation that you all do, because it inspires me to keep pushing as somebody that's getting up there now. I'll be 50 in a couple of years, which I would have never thought, man. But so that's point one. And I just want to let you know that, let the listeners know that as well, that you're highly valued. And from a more tactical side, and this is what I told the Black women when I was going around the nation talking about the Black Women Report. And I would go into the room and I would say, look around the room, how many of you sisters are Black women entrepreneurs? And usually in the evening event, it was a healthy number, like 75 to 85%. And I said, now look at 5 of you, and which 5 of you are going to start having a regular coffee date once a week to talk about entrepreneurship? One of the number one things that came out of the focus group research that we did was that Black women wanted more peer-to-peer engagement. And it's the same for Black men. And that's the most simplest thing that you could do. I mean, you could even rotate, somebody by the 5 cups once a week, and you get there and you talk about business, you exchange stories, you overlay it and overlap your network, you make connection points within those groups. One of the big things about entrepreneurship, it can be very isolating, and you can never really get 100% away from that because it is on you. But having your folks that you're regularly associated and talking about that will dramatically help. And if we just consistently committed to some of the basic things, the human element things and the community things, which are how we associate with each other, which is how we connect with each other and exchange resources and information through those relationships, then we're going to be all right. And that's an important thing to know too. I mean, because it's like Brandon said, $10. Like, we can all commit $10. We could probably commit more, to organizations that are kind of trying to build the collective objective of what we want to see. And, I was just thinking, man, I play religiously this game called Injustice Gods Among Us on my iPhone. I'm one of the best in the world. Literally, I'm not joking. I am one of the best in the world at this game. It's like, I play it. I'm like, man, just today I spent $19 on getting some new characters. I'm like, you know what? I could have gave that to Brandon. Right? Like he just had $10. Like, right? So we can start going through the stuff that we buy that we don't really need. Do you really need that extra mocha la fratte or whatever they call it with the cream on top? Or can you get a black coffee one day and give the rest to Craig or Brandon, right? So just little things, like, don't eat the whole elephant at once. Try to eat it one bite at a time. So those are my things, is just keep striving, keep working, try to work together, orient yourselves and your communities having a great vision, and we can get to where we want to go.
Okay, great. Hey, well, thank you all. That was amazing. That was, it was inspiring. This ain't even really my field, but y'all got me. I'm about to go to Liberty Bank, go to Ruby Jeans, go to Wings Cafe. I'm about ready to go start spending my money with us. So thank you all. Thank everyone for watching, and everyone take care and stay safe.
Well, I definitely want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out to really listen to what we at Black Excellence feel like is an important conversation. And I just want to let you guys know that it does not stop here. Black Excellence is about putting action to the things that we put in our platform. So be on the lookout for more conversations like this, programs, events, whether they'll be virtual right now or hopefully once we can meet again. But I want to appreciate everybody for coming in again. Please, if you have the time, register yourself as a professional with Black Excellence at bxkc.org/join us. And, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. Again, we have our Representation Matters series going on right now. Next Friday, we have a great guest Angel from the KC Royals. She's a community leader there. And, it's all about showing where we can go from where we are right now, and just creating, it's basically history in motion. So again, it's been a great hour. I hope you guys replay this. We'll share this as it goes. And if you have any questions, just reach out to us at info@bxkc.org. And you guys have a great evening. Thanks.